You don't want to chew on camera, Russ, so get ready. Swallow that.
I'm just downing the last of my ice cream cone.
Yeah, finish that. All right, we're live. I'll make sure, Russ, that you finish your ice cream cone before we start. Is that all right? You want to finish your ice cream cone before we start?
Mm-hmm.
You're live, so people, the whole world's watching you eat your ice cream cone. Just give me a second. I'm going to share out the live content, so hold on 1 second.
All right. It is what it is right now.
It is streaming live. I just want to share it out real quick, so I have to get the link. Hold on 1 second. Just give me a second, guys. We're going to share it out. Takes a second for it to show up live. Give it a second. Boy, Russ, you're like thirsty and eating.
Oh, I'm telling you, man.
And while I share this out and get the link, did you go jogging this morning?
Yeah, well, you know, I did my usual workout and stuff. Yeah, so I didn't run today. I run tomorrow. Tomorrow's my run day.
Oh. All right, well, I found the link, so just bear with me, guys. Before we get started, I'm just going to share it all out. I like to share it out to all the groups. So I like to share it out to Facebook, Keepers of Chaos, all that stuff.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but you just completely.
Can you see me, Russ? Oh, I think I lost Russ. Russ, you may have to come back in if you can see me. Let me share it out, guys. Then I'm going to go back and see if I could retrieve Russ. Russ is frozen. I don't know if you guys could see that, but Russ is frozen. It may require Russ to have to go back out and come back in. I think so. So hold on, guys. Almost there. Let me just, I like to share it out to all the groups. All right, let me hit up Russ. Come back in. All right, so most likely what he'll do is come back in. But I thought we could have a nice little live dialogue. I love having our live discussions. And people are starting to come in the room now. Let me just make sure I get Russ. He's my partner in crime. We have a couple of topics we're going to discuss. Plus, I'll start giving you what we're going to do, our real schedule now, just to keep things consistent. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. Okay, hold on. I need my partner in crime. Let me give him a call on the phone. Hold on 1 second, guys. I don't want to lose him. We had this planned. Let me see. Stand by. Yeah, can you sign back in with the number again? Just sign up. All right, you got the number for the room? Should I get off the phone then so you can sign in? Yeah, we got people coming into the room now.
One more time. I don't know why it didn't say that. Oh, here it's okay.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah, it should have me joining it now.
Yeah, we have people coming in now. Just give us a second, guys. We're setting things up. You know how it is. It's always rough at the beginning with us. Is it letting you in? Yeah, hang up from me, Russ. Hang up from me. All right, I'll talk to you in a little bit. Bye-bye. All right, guys. So Russ is trying to get in now. Russ is trying to get you in now. Just bear with this, guys. He had a bad connection. So real quick, guys. I see Little Gru. Hi, guys, here from Australia. Thank you, Little Gru, from tuning in. That makes Tier Talk International. That's pretty good. We are going to answer some of your questions only. Little Gru. Oh, here we go. We got Russ now. Russ, say hi.
Hi.
All right, so I think people are going to start being able to see you now.
Okay.
Hey, Russ, real quick, Little Gru said hi from Australia.
Oh, nice. Nice. Way down under. I'm gonna have to make it down there one of these years. Be one of my dream trips.
That means we're international, Russ.
Yes. Well, I'll go down there and swim with the great white sharks.
Okay, so we're gonna get some of these comments going, but I just want to say we got Bonnie D in the room, Anthony Whitmore, Little Gru, Gunther, and they're helping us out. At one point, they could only see me, so now you're back. Oh, and they did see the ice cream cone. That means Gunther came in early enough to see you eating ice cream.
Well, it is what it is. I'm hungry, man.
Hey, Russ, who's that standing behind you by your window?
There ain't no one standing behind me. Because I'm telling you, I got spidey sense. I would know if someone was back there.
You do definitely got some sirens or some type of blue light going on back there, though. There was.
Oh yeah, there's always a little bit of police action here and there.
Hey, I got Gary. Gary, I'm going to ask Gary if he wants to join in on the live discussion. We already have some questions coming in, so let me see if Gary wants to join in. Okay, so real quick, guys, thanks for joining. I'm sure the audience will grow as we go a little further. Guys, I just want to tell you something, guys. Tier Talk's going to start having a live Q&A every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Me and Russ will work on guests to have come on. If it's not guests, me and Russ will still be there. So every Monday night, that's going to be consistent. This Monday night, we got a bit of a treat. We have a former administrator from a tribal prison. So a prison ran by a tribal Native American council. I think they were Navajos. I know very little about that, so me and Russ are going to kind of let this gentleman lead the way, but they're going to tell you the differences on how they run compared to how a state or jail run. Hey, Russ, you have to admit, that was a very interesting conversation we had with him a couple of days ago.
Yeah, we did a conference call with him just to school up to what we're going to be doing, and it was interesting. There's a stark difference between that brand of the justice system and pretty much everything else that goes on in the United States. It's like its own separate entity, and it does have oversight by the federal system to some degree, but more or less, it's just kind of its own sovereign state.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see where that dialogue goes, but I'm very interested in seeing the questions that are asked by the audience. I really am. I'm very curious because there's a lot of different practices, but I think that if we have a good audience dialogue, a lot of good questions asked, I think that this guy is the one that's going to be able to answer that. This guy was on point.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone's gonna get something out of it because this is going to be a part of corrections that they haven't been exposed to. I know I haven't. And so, this is a different beast that they've got going on down there.
Well, Bonnie asked, she's curious about the rehabilitation component of tribal. And actually, he was discussing it. There are some similarities, but also there's not as much funding. So I'm very curious to see some of the differences. I actually deal with programming at my facility, so I think I'll be able to get some very informed questions. But I also may think that there's some people in the audience right now that have taken some of these programs. So I'm very curious to see what they would expect if they got locked up or their family member was locked up, what type of programs they would expect their family members to receive. Now, we do got some questions coming away, so let's get right to it. Keith Stone is hitting us up first. So, Russ, before I ask the question, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I always want to go first, Anthony.
All right, Russ. So this is the question. What flavor ice cream was that?
Oh, it was a drumstick, and it was chocolate with chocolate coating and some nuts on top. And
just out of curiosity, what's your favorite ice cream out there? Just very curious. I like Rocky Road. Very curious what you guys like. But on a serious note, that wasn't what Keith Stone asked. Keith Stone asked, what's your feelings regarding the medical personnel in the prison? Have you ever had a bad experience with them?
Yeah, that's one of the things that sometimes we tend to have clashes about because, sometimes they see their role as one way and we see it differently. But, one of the things that I started when I initially started Keepers of Chaos was getting, those other elements, like fire and medical, for example, on board and trying to train them and have them train us. Because it doesn't do any of us any good to, sit there and butt heads. But, sometimes that's the way it's going to be. But, it always has to be safety and security first, but it's better to bring those people on board. I was I was in our evidence room where we checked stuff in one day, and I had a big old shank that I just found. And this the director of nursing came by, and I said, "Hey, come over for a second." And so I showed him the shank, and he goes, "Wow, that's got to be like, a once in a year thing." I said, "No, this is like every day for me." And he said, "Really?" And so it was kind of this back and forth. And so from that point on, every week I would send him all the shanks that I'd found, all the cell phones that I'd found, and give him discussion to have with his nurses so that they could understand the environment that they were in. So anyway, it's really a good thing to try and bring them forward and to try and have some give and take, some back and forth to try and cement what we've got going on, because they're part of the team too.
Well, you know what, Russ, I agree 100%. Guys, we mentioned this before, but I don't like to have that generalized animosity. Like, I don't like working in a facility where civilians are against custody. I know we're not going to all get along with that generalized, like, well, that person represents custody, well, then I'm not going to like all of custody, or that person represents medical, I'm not going to like all of medical. I find that partnership obviously is very needed. And for the most part, my dealings have been great. I believe that once I got an understanding of what's expected from medical, I got an understanding of what they obviously expect from me. And I think there is a working relationship. The only bad experience I may have had was when we both had two different missions to accomplish, if I may. I remember a situation where there was an inmate that was called to the facility for a medical, but he really shouldn't have been called to the facility. He actually should have been sent out. And unfortunately, we had to get the inmate in, but the inmate had these medical concerns. So it was a matter of, I have to get this inmate through safety and security measures. But the problem is the inmate may not have been strong enough to go through all that. So I'm not going to kind of go too much into it, but what we found a working relationship between me and medical to get the job done. And I really feel that if we work in an isolated manner, then those situations become impossible. But if we work together, like if I'm talking to medical and medical's talking to me, there's no impossible situation, because we'll understand where each other is coming from and then how to work at the goal together. Now, unfortunately, if there are some of those facilities that feel that these departments are working in isolation of each other, then you got to start going to administration, because administration are facilitators. So what administration does is administration is meant to smooth the bridges between those complicated relationships. So if there's a chance where you have all these departments and they're just not working together collectively and they rather work together isolated, the mission's going to fail. The mission's going to fail. So what needs to happen is we need to bring those matters higher up and then really kind of discover what the issue is. But what I found out for the most part is that it's really personal issues. Like if you bring these departments to the table and you got the best of the best and they're battling over something that you on the outside is thinking like, guys, this is common sense. The answer to this is simple. You know for a fact that these two people just don't get along. And unfortunately, now they're bringing down what the total mission is. So my thing is this, is that we work with medical works with us. If we understand what their perspective is and they understand what our perspective is, there's nothing we can't accomplish. But we have to remember that we don't work in isolation, that we have to work together. And I really do believe that medical does appreciate the safety and security that we provide, but I also believe that we appreciate medical. I know in a lot of cases, I know not in all cases, unfortunately, but in a lot of cases, when an officer goes out, medical is going to be there to help them, to assist. Sad thing is, I know in some states, they try to tell medical they can't get involved in that, but I'm going to tell you something. When a code happens, an officer does get hurt, medical may like, you know what? I don't care what the rule is. My job is to save that person's life, and that individual will do what they can to protect that officer. But again, you got to have that good working relationship with each other, because if you don't, the inmates see that divide and they kind of play all angles. But right at the beginning, front line, I respect everybody's position and what they do. They respect me. And I think that's what makes me a better facilitator in the admin position, because I kind of have an idea of what each person's mission is. And as the administrator, or, working as the superintendent, I kind of understand where we need to be collectively. And I think that really helped me become a better leader and really get an understanding of what the different departments need. But, it really is based on the individual. So I hope we don't, have a negative experience with one person and decide to make the department defined by that, because that's killing us. If I have a problem with Russ, it's just with Russ. Me and Russ will deal with it, as opposed to me now saying I have a problem with all the custody. You can't do that, guys. You can't generalize that, because at the end of the day, inmates are going to see that divide, and we just become extremely weak. People don't realize how important we are for each other. Not just that, the power in our numbers. If we all got along, oh my God, how powerful will we be on the outside? Yeah, but I think that's a great question. I covered it a lot of times. Me and Russ have dialogue with Connie Eileen. She's been on my show multiple times. She shares a lot of great stories. So guys, if you go to Corrections 1, we actually released one today, custody and civilians, but really custody and medical working together. So you guys should get a chance to check that out. It's a good episode. Okay, moving forward, this comes from Anthony Whitmore. What do you feel could help the divide between civilian and certified staff inside a facility? Guys, before Russ answers this, because you'll go first, I love these questions, because that means that we're making an effort to bridge that divide. And I'm telling you something, guys, it's needed. Russ, what do you think we could do to bridge that divide?
Okay, well, the question, as I understand it, sounds like to me like he's talking about the difference between custody and every other civilian resource out there. And, sometimes in different departments, in different units, in different, in different prisons, facilities, what have you, you can have, a toxic culture start to take hold. And, that's not good for any of us. And I think that in a lot of cases, it's as simple as, reaching across the aisle. And sometimes we don't want to do that, because we're in that officer mindset where if it's not about safety and security, to us, sometimes it doesn't exist. But we got to understand that these other resources out there, these other, parts of the department, they have goals, and they have responsibilities that they have to meet as well. So it can't be just about us. And it's as simple in my mind as, reaching across that aisle and talking to them, getting in there and trying to, get them some training so that they know what our viewpoint is, and to try and help them as far as, being safer, more secure, and having a look at. Because sometimes some of the first intel that I get in a situation that might be going down has come from, medical staff or secretaries or anything else, because they see something, or some of these inmates will say things around them that they would never say around me, because I'll be pouncing on that stuff. So, you got to think of them as a resource. And if they don't know what to look for, they can't function in that, spot for you. But you give them a little bit of, information and tell them what you're looking for. Sometimes they can help you out on these things. And it's, we want to work together. So that's my viewpoint on it. And, I like training those people, because they're thirsty for that knowledge usually. Sometimes you get a bunch of 10-year veterans there sitting in the classroom and stuff. It's a tough crowd, man. It's a tough crowd.
I would also like to add kind of what Russ is saying, but I think we should have some cross-perspective training. I think a lot of custody staff may not be aware of what these roles of these civilians are. And basically, if you're not aware of what their roles are, you may not understand the needs of what they have to get done. So I believe that there should be a time in training, whether it's done in yearly training or get those officers right in the academy, where you have these civilians come up and speak to the officers and let them know, like, this is what our role is. This is what we need to get done. This is what we need to accomplish. Because when you think about it, guys, I always tell you guys this, is that custody is like the canvas and the art is everybody else. So custody is there, yes, to provide safety and security, but you're also there to facilitate these programs. Let's not forget about that. I mean, this is about rehabilitation right now, and we have to balance rehabilitation with safety and security. So custody is there to facilitate those movements. So when those programs are coming in, they're relying on you to make it happen. So if you guys don't understand what's needed of them, then it's not going to really get the job done. That's why, like for me, when I was a unit officer, I would want to know who's coming in my unit. What are you doing in my unit? I was very interested, but I also have to be interested. It's my unit. So if someone came into my unit, let's say that was a social worker, oh, what's your name? What program are you running? Blah, blah, blah. And then when people call me up, hey, what do you got? Well, you know what, guys, at 10 o'clock, I'm running this program, such and such is here. And we just become very informed. But that really does start with the communication that we have with those civilian resources. And I like the fact that Russ is using the word resource, because I would also like to think that the civilians look at us as a resource, because again, we all complement each other's needs. So I think that if we just tried this cross-perspective training, just try to get an understanding of what each department needs to get done and how we interact with each other, like, basically how we can facilitate it, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. I really do think that we would find that not only would things run smoother, not only would we have better morale, I'll tell you that right now, less of a divide, but I really start thinking that all parties will be more involved with that end result. And that's the key, because I honestly know that the people I work with, the programs, they're going to be very thankful of custody, because without custody, they can't get the job done. But when custody looks at, well, part of the mission is not just safety and security, part of the mission is rehabilitation, well, then you also look at the program side and say, hey, good job on what you're doing, because again, it's rehabilitation, safety, and security. They have to partner up. It's not an isolated mission. So we have to do it together. So just an understanding, I think that's what's going to help out on the divide. And just, I think with that understanding will come that respect. I know what you're doing now. I know what I got to do. And now how do we blend the roads together? I think that's key. What's your thoughts on that, Ant? I know you asked the question. I'm just curious if we kind of answered it. I hope I'm saying this right. Shamanique Johnson, greetings from Indiana. I currently work at one of the maximum facilities in Indiana and have 3 years experience prior. How do you deal with new CEOs coming out of the academy who think they're it? They're the bomb diggity.
I'll tell you what, I hear this question all the time. So, it really makes me think that there's, probably some deeper seated problem out there that's happened over the years. And as you know, I did a video for Tier Talk where I discussed, actually supervising millennials. And, millennials are great. A lot of them are fantastic. But there's some of them out there that they really don't understand the common work ethic of the prior generations in some ways. Usually what I found as a sergeant that helped me deal with someone that thought they knew everything is I would put them in situations where it was clear that they didn't. And I would work them until they dropped, until they realized that, hey, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I need to listen a little more. Because I wouldn't even give them time to listen. I just, put them right to work. And, sometimes that's the only way you can deal with people. Eventually, if they come around full circle in that and they get tired of, having to hustle all the time, then they're sometimes a little more receptive to what you have to say. Having to develop, some kind of, criteria. Oh, wow, something's happening in the house. Developing, some, lesson planning and stuff that you could do for them is sometimes really hard, but you just got to stick with it and hope that, either they're going to start catching on, they're going to start tuning in, they're going to start getting focused on what they're doing, or go by the wayside, one of the two.
Well, I will tell you one thing. I've kind of dealt with rookies that kind of think they know it all, because the problem is, as the academy evolves, sometimes the older experienced staff may not get some of the more recent training that the newer boots are getting. So unfortunately, these trainers that are training the newer boots may say, this is a different academy now. We've evolved. And what they don't realize is that they're kind of dummying down the experienced staff behind the wall, which is really where that training needs to happen. You know, that on-the-job training is so important. But yes, you do need that academy. But what happens here, I feel like they focus so much on that evolution of the training that they minimize the importance of also partnering that person with experience and, you know, not dummying down how important that person is who's survived the profession for so long. So now you have this rookie that's coming in that's already feels that he's or she is better than the senior officers because of the training. Maybe when I went to the academy you know, years ago, maybe I only had 4 weeks. Now the academy's at 5 months. So now the rookie comes in, like, I got training for 5 months. You've only got training for, you know, 1 month. But wait a second, but this guy's also got 24 years on the job. You know what I mean? I mean, we're not mentioning that, you know, 24 years on the job is nothing to, you know, blink an eye with. And then the concern now is that now you have this kind of like a divide right from the get-go, which is sad, a little bit of a divide. But the concern is that you get this officer who could have a great foundation. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's great to get that evolution, to have that amount of time in that academy. But you can balance that with that experience, and that only makes you better. So why would you want to turn yourself away from that? You got a senior officer that's been working for 24 years, and you're being put next to him. That's an honor, in my opinion. That's a privilege. If you're going to make this a career, and they partner you with two things, by the way, an officer with experience like that, but also an officer that wants to teach, an officer that oh my God, I mean, the partnership, that dance that's created would be beautiful. But unfortunately, what happens is sometimes we get those rookies that are already closed off because they feel that they're better than that senior officer because of whatever's going on in the academy, and not realizing there's that partnership there. And one other thing I do like, though, if you do get officers that are new to the job, sometimes they come in with a lot of energy. And I do like partnering with certain staff that I feel have become complacent in their ways. Because what I hope to happen is, this is where it's a conflict here, but I don't want complacency training complacency. But what I'm hoping is that when you get a new officer that's energetic, he brings that energy back to that person that may have gotten lost in their ways. You know what I mean? Like, you get an officer that asks a lot of questions, that may get that officer who's complacent, maybe go back and read policy. Because the concern here is that if I get staff that I know is complacent, they ain't training nobody for me. Because at the end of the day, sometimes these officers have been complacent for so long that they don't realize that they're so far off policy, it's ridiculous. But if you can find a good partnership between that energetic individual who's coming into with that energy, and you partner them with someone that, you know, is willing to teach them and basically maybe willing to kind of share a little bit of that energy, I think it's great. And I really do think what people don't realize is that could be such a good benefit for the person that is the experienced officer getting that new boot, but definitely for the new boot who has a chance to complement that newer academy with 24, 25 years of an experienced veteran. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Russ? Do you agree?
Oh, you know, absolutely. And any staff member that, you know, that wants to, you know, take that bull by the horns and help train up, that's what you want. And you're right about that complacency. If you have a complacent officer out there and you're just, you know, you're sending the new cadet or the new boot over there to them, you're right. They're only being taught complacency because that person doesn't even recognize the fact that they're blind. So, yeah, some youthful energy is always good. And that's why one of the things that I did, especially during my last few years, is we always got academy visits of, you know, sometimes of upwards of, you know, more than 100 cadets sometimes at a time. And I always, you know, tried to take the time every time to run them through what we were doing with chow, what we're doing with mass pat downs, what we're doing with searches, you know, what we're doing with program and the housing units and running the yard. So, you know, I always hoped that would, you know, rub off on my other staff and that they'd want to take someone under their wing and try and bring this forth, because it's, you know, it's really just not a good idea to try and do this, you know, sink and swim bullshit, or, you know, you're a new guy, I'm not talking to you until you have at least 2 or 3 years on your belt. It's ridiculous, some of the, you know, quiet, you know, so-called tacit policies that get developed that really aren't real policies.
Well, I like what Gunther says. He goes, behind the wall training is the best. You can't train that. I agree. So hopefully, guys, if you're in a position where you're training new boots, and maybe you're privileged to have a training academy that's really evolved, don't minimize or negate the experienced officers. Don't, you know, try to do what you can to balance that evolution of the academy, but make those new boots mindful of the fact that, wait a second, this is just a piece of it. Now we have to mold you with this here, which is those experienced officers or those experienced staff members that really have that idea of what it's like to survive in this profession. Because, guys, I could see people that can do a 5-6 month academy, but can't do a day behind the wall. You know, you can't teach heart. You know, you really can't. Hey, Russ, this question is actually specifically for you. It comes from My Life is V. And they said, Russ, what are the chances I can work at the same prison my boyfriend in CDCR? Will CDCR work with us, or do we have to be married? He's already a CO, but I'm currently in the process.
You know, that kind of depends a little bit on, you know, that particular prison, and you know, how many bodies it's, you know, down below, you know, how many bodies they need to hire. As you come further into the hiring process, you know, it's probably worth your time for your boyfriend or husband or whatever he is to you to be able to reach out to someone at that prison. And if they have enough spaces to fill, sometimes they'll accommodate you, you know, as long as it's not, you know, a prison that everyone's trying to get to. And they may be able to, once you're even at the academy, to be able to help you to make that jump to get stationed at that particular prison. If it's one of those prisons that's, you know, down in the southern part of the state, a lot of times you may get that as one of your options right from the get-go. You got to remember, I don't know how many prisons California even has right now. You know, it's 33 or 34, something like that. So I would say that you stand a really good shot at ending up in that position, but you may have to work at it a little bit. Like I say, I would see if your boyfriend could, you know, write a letter to the warden or talk to someone in hiring so that you could be tapped from the get-go. Once you're close enough on that list to be reached, you've got to be reachable for them to get you, you know, into the process first, though.
You know, Russ, I may have to ask a question now for you. This actually comes from me. How do you feel about husband and wives working together as officers in the same prison?
You know, I got to tell you that I saw it all the time. And so are there issues? Yes. Are there potential issues? Certainly there are. So, you know, it's really just a matter of, you know, whatever the policy is at the moment, you know, usually it tends to be, you have to work separate yards, and if one of them has rank or something, then you can't be, you know, in that chain of command. Now that sometimes just goes out the door when you're working all these mad hours and people are swapping and being mandatory overtime and voluntary overtime. But that was generally the way I would rather see it. It's just, you know, as long as you're not within that chain of command and on a different unit, it's not a problem. One thing you do want to watch about that, though, because it can create problems, of course, is you don't want the inmates knowing your business. So if you've got a funny last name, they're probably going to dial into that pretty quick. And, you know, just don't play into that. Just say, hey, you know what, that's not your business. You need to, you know, not be asking about that, and, you know, stop that dead in its tracks. I mean, there are real, and sometimes, I'm not gonna say all the time, but there are real and sometimes significant safety and security issues that go along with those things. So we want to nip those things in the bud, and, you know, that's at least my viewpoint on the way it's worked, and that's the way that it tends to be looked at within CDCR.
Yeah, and you also, if I may add something, I like we're talking about the professionalism, especially if you become a supervisor. You can't supervise directly over them. So I believe there's a waiver, like an ethics waiver some states will do, where if there's a chance I'd be your supervisor, if I could defer that responsibility to somebody else on the shift, we're good. I could sign off saying I can't be involved in any type of direct supervision. And what we mean by that is really some form of discipline action, I believe. Like, I mean, obviously we're on the same shift. I could give you orders and stuff like that, but if it comes to disciplinary action, stuff like that, technically I can't handle that. There'd be a waiver. Now, in some cases, if there's, let's say, another sergeant available, it would go to that sergeant. Or if there is no sergeant, it can go to a lieutenant. Now, if you're high up, and let's say you're the shift commander, at that point, that responsibility cannot be deferred. So you're not going to be able to work on the same shift because now that person is directly over you. And it could be seen as what they call like favoritism or nepotism, whatever. So you kind of sign off a little bit on that. But do I think it's a good idea? I know relationships do develop at the workplace. For me, in my experience, I've never seen it go well. I'm sorry, not to be a downer, but just to kind of give you the heads up, kind of be objective with it. I mean, what's your thoughts, guys, in the audience there? I think sometimes people get distracted when their loved one works there. I don't know if that makes any sense, but sometimes they get very distracted of what their loved one is doing, or maybe, you know, they're constantly calling them on the phone instead of doing their job, or they're trying to get partnered up with them. Like, hey, my wife's working this unit, Sarge. You mind if I work with them today? Or I know it sounds weird, but it happens. So what I would do is before that happens, you're going to want to have that conversation with your spouse and let them to know at work it's professional. You know, that, you know, if you're not always going to work together, you know, it is what it is, but you have to maintain that professionalism. And if either one of you have an issue with somebody else, you shouldn't really get involved in that person's issue. If I'm saying it right. Like, so if me and Russ are working together, and let's say I have a wife on the job and Russ all of a sudden has a problem with my wife, I shouldn't automatically invite myself into that situation. And nor should my wife want me to invite myself into that situation. She can either handle it herself, or she has a level of command that she can take it to. But the last you want to do is now get me involved in whatever it is. And then now it's just, we're breaking that line of professionalism. I've seen supervisors that dated officers, and then the supervisors kind of lets those officers live that they're dating. And then staff is like, hey, listen, that person's allowed to leave 20 minutes early because, you know, you guys may be a couple, and now I want to leave 20 minutes early. And, you know, it's tough. But I guess if you talk to your partner, let them know those rules and specifically say whatever concerns you have, you know, with somebody, that you'll deal with those concerns. You don't expect them to get involved. And if they do get involved, you should correct them and say, listen, do me a favor. Don't get involved in this. Let me handle this. You may be okay. But again, I'm not 100% fan of that. But I still think it's a great question. But Russ, do you think that dialogue should happen though? Like before they start working together? I mean, do you agree with the fact that our concerns are our concerns, not like an isolated manner where I'm not bringing you or getting you involved in my issues? I'm going to still follow the steps that I need to take to solve the issues, which doesn't mean bringing my husband in.
Yeah, you know, you've got to be, you know, pre-planned to know what's going to happen when and if, you know, these scenarios, you know, come to fruition, because you don't want any surprises on how the other party's going to react to it. Obviously, you want to be, you know, on the same page and have it dialed in, so that way there's not an issue, and, you know, so you don't ruin it for other people that are, you know, in the same boat, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a tough thing because I'm sure there's some pros to it. I'm trying to see if some people say I still work at the same prison with my ex-wife. We still talk daily. Cleefit says, especially if you both work on the same floor area, it could be a bad mix. I like what Cleefit also says. He says, Inmates will feed off relationship and attempt to bait you. That's kind of exactly what Russ said. And Wendy Edwards even said, not a good idea to work with a spouse or a lover. And, Bonnie said nepotism. Yeah, I'm leaning towards that, though, to be honest with you. I really am. I'm not 100% fan of it, only because I've seen the outcome, and I've seen people get involved with stuff. Like if I was a supervisor and I have a problem, let's say with the wife, all of a sudden I get the husband coming up to me now, where it's like, hey, listen, my problem isn't with you, though. Problem is with your wife. So your wife shouldn't be pulling you in this, or vice versa, So, that's where I would tell my wife, hey, listen, if you get yourself caught up, this is your chain. Follow that chain and don't expect me to get involved. And technically, maybe you may not want to tell me everything then. I don't know. I think it's complicated, very hard. But again, I'm sure it could be beneficial too, but I'm not a total big fan of that. Okay, so we got some more questions. We got a lot of questions, Russ. We have a lot.
Our way.
Yeah. All right. So this is from Robbie the Sheath. I just got a job offer to be a CO and I start in 2 weeks. Congratulations, Rob. I've been a police officer for 3 years now and I'm working. If you have any advice on developing a CO mentality versus a cop mentality. So what do you got for that, Russ? You want to go first? Want me to go first?
Yeah, no, I'll take that. Having been an officer, that will serve you well in most respects, I feel. But the one thing that you've got to understand too is that not every interaction that you're going to have with an inmate is going to be negative. Whereas out there on the street, sometimes, you go to, call after call after call. That's, a bunch of, this domestic problems and whatnot. And you're always seeing, the hyped up, amped up end of it. With inmates, especially if they're prison inmates as opposed to jail inmates, you'll see that a lot less. And do you have to baby them some? Yeah, but not every interaction is going to be negative. And you're going to have to, focus. You got the two parts. You're going to have the part that you have to focus on with respect to law enforcement and, following the policies of the prison. And also, making sure that you help with regards toward whatever programs and rehabilitation they've got. It's real easy to get down and get negative about the rehabilitation aspect because, yes, sometimes it is a pain in the ass, but nevertheless, we have to try and facilitate that and we have to try and promote it. Then on the other end, though, when it's hammer time, when there's a safety and security issue, when it's time to enforce that law, you've got to be on that too. I will say one thing, I think you're going to be really surprised at what you're going to learn with respect to body language and keying in on things that are happening on that yard because it's so concentrated and so dense. And I think you're really going to be able to quickly pick up and develop that, that spidey sense about things that are going on and hopefully get in there and work some angles with regard to contraband and weapons and that kind of thing. So good luck to you, man. I hope you have a fabulous career.
Yeah, by the way, good luck, Robbie. I actually want to add something on that too. By the way, Russ, spot on, obviously. I believe both our roads are very similar because as I said, corrections is law enforcement. I'm not going to argue that. So I feel that there's a bit of the mentality that's shared. I agree with that universal sense of precaution, the need to protect and serve. I also agree that that community resource aspect. I mean, you have community policing. I mean, what do you think corrections is? Corrections is all about utilizing communities. We talked about it just moments ago about the partnership we need to have with civilian staff. Well, I would say the same thing for a police officer, the partnerships they have to have with those organizations out there to help get the job done, to help meet the needs of the people that they're trying to serve. The only maybe slight difference is, well, again, because nowadays things have changed. So I don't know, but I would say corrections really needs to communicate. I mean, that's the number one tool, because again, we're in an environment where we're severely outnumbered. our mouth is what pretty much saves us. I'm not saying that doesn't do it for a police officer, but police officers may have better tools on their belt. And some of them, unfortunately, some police officers, because most of them never walk in a prison. And again, this is not bad mouthing them. Don't take it the wrong way, but hear me out just from my perspective. You know, it doesn't mean I'm 100% correct, but, you know, they may rely on that tool where correctional officers have learned not to rely on those tools because some of them don't even have those tools. So their number one tool is that mouth, how they communicate, how they, that verbal judo, if you will. I would love to see police officers kind of walk a jail, you know, walk a tier, work in a prison. I think that would humble them a little bit, and I think that would make them better officers if they ever decide to do a lateral move. I'm not going to say a stepping stone because I don't think it is a stepping stone, but if they ever decide to be a correctional officer first and then become a police officer, I think they would be freaking excellent police officers because they know how to communicate. But I think the one difference would, again, just be that. Oh, you know what's another difference too, guys? Actually, when you think about it, the power of the uniform. Police officers, we don't really interact with them as much as, let's say, an inmate would interact with a correctional officer. So usually when a police officer enters the scene, the sirens, all that stuff, there's a condition of respect that should be there. Don't get me wrong. I know times are going one way, but for the most part, when I get pulled over, because I don't deal with police every day, I get an automatic, oh, shoot, let me put my keys on top of the car. Let me get in that automatic respect mode. You know, and that's great because that uniform becomes the first shield for that officer. It should come to be that first shield for that officer. So I would like to think that on the outside, the people look at the uniform first, and then it's the individual. Now, don't get me wrong. If that same cop pulls me over 30 days in a row, we're like, yo, what's your problem, man? Because now I'm not really seeing the uniform. I'm seeing the individual. In corrections, the inmates are conditioned to the uniform. They deal with these officers every day. They know who they are. So the uniform really doesn't have that initial shield, that power, if you will, because it really is about the individual. So I will say in corrections, that uniform, you know, you really can't be dependent on that uniform to automatically grant you that level of authority that you need to get the job done. It really is about you and how you carry yourself. I think that's a difference. Russ, would you agree with that? The power of the uniform?
Yeah, there's a desensitization because you know, those inmates, they're dealing with officers of one stripe or another, you know, day in and day out. There's not a day that goes by that they don't have some contact with us. And so they really stop seeing, you know, that symbol of authority. And so for them, you know, that conflict can crop up, and it can happen very fast. Especially, of course, you know, if you're dealing with a lifer and they'll tell you that they just don't care.
Well, Wendy Edwards actually agrees. She says she agrees with the uniform. I really do think that. You know, it just came to me as we were having this discussion. But I think I mentioned on a topic before about the power of first impressions, where I think that we're coming into the system. These inmates are already conditioned to our uniform, and it really does come down to who that individual is that works behind the wall. And if they don't respect that individual, they're not going to respect what the person wears. Where I think on the streets, it may be a little bit different, but unfortunately, the media is killing us. The media is making it very hard for real law enforcement to do their job because of that bias and that animosity. And now, unfortunately, that initial shield that law enforcement has, that power of presence, has been challenged a lot. And they don't realize how important that is for those officers to keep that. You know what I mean? Again, but corrections never operated with that to begin with. It's funny because let me see something. Get the next question. Where are you going, Russ?
I'll be right there. I'm letting someone by here.
All right, I got another. I'm going to go through some more questions. I'm just there's a lot of questions coming, which is great. Let me see. So, hey, Russ, this is a good question for you. This comes from Charles Berry. Oh, I saw your wife, Russ.
Yeah.
Your wife had a cameo on Tear Talk. Hey!
Yes, that's my wife, Kate, everyone.
Oh, it must be great to have a wife watch your shows and support you.
She does. She's the greatest. Tomorrow we're gonna go on a hike or a swim or something.
Well, you know what? I think she sees that you're happy doing what you do, and that's great to have that love, that support. And she looks great, by the way, Russ. She looks great.
Yes, she's her and I. That's our thing now that I'm retired. Is we stay in shape. We every day is a run or a hike or lifting weights or doing something like that. And of course, she was just a little bit more than a month ago. I had to rush her to the hospital. She almost died. And so, but she's back in form. She still, has some tenderness in her abdomen, but that's going away too. Today she did very well. She worked out hard and got some miles in on the treadmill.
Hey, real quick, Dana mentioned something before I ask Charles' question. Dana does have a good point. Dana Simpkins. Let me just make sure. Just want to check on something. Yeah, Dana Simpkins is actually. She's like my new best friend right now because we kind of work for the same company, Guardian RFID, which is a company that's very supportive of corrections. If you guys get a chance, check out their website. Anybody that supports the mission, the respect that they have for what we do, just by talking to the gentlemen, they're very informed. Very big fan of who they are. Just again, because they respect us. That's the key. And for them, we are officers. There's no question in their hearts. We are officers. And when someone calls me a correctional officer, what's going on? I'm more than happy to talk to you for days, and he never slipped and said guard, by the way. So, because sometimes people will start up and they slip and say guard. It's like, oh, come on, we were doing so good. But she mentioned something. This is actually true. A lot of the inmates that we deal with know the rules better than us. So I don't know because that creates a tough environment for us. And don't get me wrong. Sometimes police may deal with that person, that may feel that they know a lot more, like those sovereign citizens or whatever it is, who are just totally way off track. But we do have some inmates that really do test the system, that really do know the system. And if you don't have officers that are on their game, that really are kind of reading up on policies and stuff that's happening to corrections on a local or national level, these inmates are going to be smarter than the officers. And when the officers go to implement these rules the inmates are going to question them. And then later on, they find out, holy crap, the inmate is right. And then I'll go back and tell the officer, you got to read up on this stuff, because these inmates are very intelligent. They have nothing else but to read up on the changes that are happening, but especially the changes that are happening at this facility. So if you don't take the time to read that policy that the major gave you, but you signed off on it, you're going to be responsible. But that inmate knows that policy. Don't think they don't. And then when you go to have that back, I've had inmates correct me. It's not personal. It's like, oh, is that what it says? Let me take a look. Not in a way where we're going after each other. It's like inmate may come up and say, hey, for clarity, what exactly does this mean? Let me take a look. Well, what do you get from it? Well, this is what I get from it. Let me figure it out. But then you get some inmates that literally just study it. That's what they do. And they just want to challenge every officer that gives an order. And if you don't know the policies, that inmate's going to win every time. And that's sad. So if you get a chance, guys, devote your time, read those policies, read those procedures, because the inmates are. Now, Russ, this is a good question that came from, where is it? It was Charles Berry. Speaking of academy, do you think the trend of having the drill sergeant instructor is needed in the academy setting?
Oh, so I think what he's talking about there is you want your academy to be more of a paramilitary setting, or do you want it to be something that's a little bit more casual, a little bit more oriented towards, say, something like you would see with college classes and stuff. I went through two different types of academies like that. The first academy that I went through, California Department of Corrections, my class, I believe, was the last one where we had to have our heads shaved, as a matter of fact. And I think it's good, especially if you've never experienced conflict. If you've never experienced someone yelling at you, if you've never experienced hostility, because those things exist within that environment, that it's good for you. You need to understand what it's like to function under some of those extremes like that. Now, if you've already had that, if you've had prior military, if you've had, some prior law enforcement experience, I would say that that's probably not as important. The second academy that I did, it was much more like attending classes at the college each day. We did do quite a bit of physical training with regards toward defensive tactics and physical fitness, but it was really just casual. We just showed up. There was no embarking orders or any of that sort of thing. So I think that if you're going to work inside of a department like I did the first time, I first started in California Department of Corrections. My first prison was San Quentin State Prison. I think that it was necessary and good that I got that treatment, and that I felt that I could handle those extremes of emotion that went on day to day inside that type of environment. I don't think I would be the officer or the sergeant I became later on. I don't think I'd be as good if it was just, a matter of going to some college class, some college course that didn't set up that type of paramilitary environment. I hope that satisfies this question there.
I think I also want to add something. I think the reason why the environment's so intense is because I think the instructors do want to have that divide with the trainees, because I believe it's that group dynamic where if they have that divide, it kind of pushes the trainees together. You know what I mean? So like basically, the more you kind of have that animosity towards that instructor, the more we come together as a group. And I think they're trying to reinforce that. And then once they feel that they've established that, they lessen it, because I think in the end, I think what happens is when you go behind that wall, they do want to make you guys have a tight fit with each other, because you're going to risk your life for this person. You have to be motivated to do that. So the thing is that you're running not because it's just someone wearing a uniform. You're running because you see them as family, and I think that they try to bring that bond together, because that's going to hopefully reinforce your want to run to a code. I mean, I'll give an example. If something's happening to my family member, I'm not going to think twice about running in to protect them, because that's my family. That's my loved ones. So I think what the academy does is they kind of build this environment where, I'm not going to say it's an us versus them, but it sort of is, where you get one side kind of being all intense and all that on those rookies. But I really do think they want to see those rookies supporting each other, building that support group, and then eventually building that bond that's going to make it into the prison wall, where I know you got my back because we survived the academy together, but also reflecting that as we all wear the same color, the blue, and then behind the wall, I'm hoping that, when something happens to anybody wearing blue or any civilian staff, that we're there together. So I think it is needed. And what's funny, I guess kind of a tangent off this, is that's why I'm not a big fan of boot camps for inmates. The reason why I'm not a fan of boot camps, and don't get me wrong, because there are studies that show it works. But I also think there's another concern that people don't realize when it comes to boot camps. But granted, I'm not saying they don't work. This is just me being my OCD self. But when you have that environment, that kind of that drill sergeant environment, you may wind up bringing inmates together that wouldn't normally unite. So think about it. When you're in an academy or even in the military, that bond brings these officers together like family. So now you could be fostering that with inmates. So now if I'm an officer and that's my unit and I have a problem with one inmate, are the other inmates now going to kind of come at me? Like, am I fostering a unity here without me realizing that? Am I OCD? I don't know, but I do know that studies of group behavior have shown that if there's animosity towards one group, that could reinforce the solidarity of the other group. So I think it's good in our setting, but am I 100% fan that inmates are boot camps? I can't say there's proof that says it works, but on the other side of it, I really do believe it fosters a bit of unity. That could be a problem for us. And I don't know if that's ever been reported. I'm very curious. If you ever work in a camp, or like a boot camp, do you feel that the inmates are more united than the regular population? I mean, Russ, just out of curiosity, do you feel that the inmates that are in those boot camps for those time being, do you feel that those inmates have a more sense of unity than the inmates that you find in a general population?
Well, see, that's the thing, really, is because that's really what you're, for whatever reason, you're trying to foster. So can that possibly be a bad thing? I would think so. I would hope that you would have staff that are put in that position to implement that kind of program that would be smart enough to make sure that that type of unity that can end up turning into a problem, turning into an incident, you would hope that they would be guarding against that occurring. So, you know, I think it's definitely something to watch. Like you say, though, there's been some pretty good programs that have come out and started and had some successes. So I think it would be one of those things where if you were charged with putting one of those programs in place, you'd want to look at that. And really, it would come down to picking the right staff to be able to do that.
Hey, Russ, I'm going to step away, so you're going to get this one. This one's for you.
Okay.
I want to get another bottle of water, so you have to give me 3 minutes. So you got to talk for at least 3 minutes.
3 minutes? I can do it.
But this is coming from David Caitlin. How should I prepare myself mentally and physically for the CDCR Academy, which he's facing a month away?
A month away. Okay. So anyway, the CDCR Academy is not the paramilitary thing that it once was. They do. I'm only going off of what I've been told because it's been a long time since I did that academy. But the main thing that you want to do to prepare yourself is, first of all, if I were you, I would get out there and I would be running every day. And if you can stand to do it right now, if you've already spooled up enough to get to where you can run at least 3 miles. Okay, I'm an old guy. I run 6.25 miles every other day. So, if you can get to that point where you're prepared and you can run 3 miles, you should ace whatever they've got going there. I'm not sure what the standards are right now. The mental aspect is, of course, something that you can't ignore either, though. On the mental aspect of it, just know that you are going, hey, Anthony, you are going to be messed with. You're going to be put under pressure. You're going to be put in positions where you will be forced to perform. You're going to have a lot of things that you're going to have to do, and you're going to have to come through. And they're not that hard, but there are a lot of people that can't handle some very simple, basic stress. Especially when you're out there on the firing line and you're especially if you don't have any previous experience with firearms, it's gonna test you, it's gonna challenge you. So you want to be able to function mentally on those things. Just keep your brain clear, listen to what those instructors tell you, and then do exactly what they tell you, no more, no less. So you're gonna have done the firearms. You're going to end up, having to do the baton. You're going to be doing defensive tactics. So all these things are really physical. So I don't know what you've done up to this point to prepare yourself. A month is not a long time to do this, though. But I would definitely start in on that running. The running, if that's the only thing you can do, then I would choose running.
Yeah, and I will say, guys, the academy, I believe. The curriculum can be found on the internet too, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of it. They'll dial it in. They have it all lined out, how many hours of each thing, and it's a progression. Really, it's really a progression of classes. You'll have the firearms, you'll have restraints and handcuffing, you'll have defensive tactics, you'll have baton, you'll have chemical munitions and chemical agents, which is always my favorite thing. And then you're going to also have to do all the stuff with regard to the PC 832 class. The PC 832 class is arrest and search and seizure, and that's what you have to have in order to function as a peace officer in the state of California. So, and that's, you have to know the laws about search and seizure and arresting people and all of those things. And, it's break down. It sounds like a lot when you first hear it, but as you go through it day by day, it's not near as terrifying as it sounds. If I were you, I would work definitely though. If you have a way to do it, work on some of your pistol skills with a Glock handgun, because I hear tell that there are a lot of people that just can't make the course of fire, and it's not a hard course of fire. So that's my 2 cents worth on those things. Run though, run.
Now, Cleefit asked a question. Cleefit's our boy. I was actually going to have him on. He said he was going to be on. I think we're going to do this Monday, guys. We're going to have a Q&A with an admin from a tribal facility. The following Monday, I guess that would be the 23rd, I'm going to have RDAP Dan on, Dan Wise, and we're going to discuss some of the drug programs in the federal prisons, especially the residential drug addiction program. That I believe Bonnie's familiar with RDAP Dan. He's a good guy, former inmate, but totally has respect for what we do. I've watched his channel long enough to realize that he does respect the profession, and right now he's trying to change lives. So I think it would be great to get him on the show. We'll talk about the drug treatment programs they have there, and just to kind of give us a perspective of the other side, because he was a former inmate as well. So he'll be open to answer any questions that we may feel are beneficial for us from that perspective. But Brian, I guess I could say his name because he was going to come on in a couple of weeks. Why not? Brian had a question that he asked me today, or maybe yesterday, that I don't have an answer for because I'm definitely not familiar with it, but I know what happens. But he said, what's your feelings between part-time and full-time COs? So I guess there could be some states or some jails that actually have officers that don't work full-time. I don't know. I've never worked with that. I don't know what the differences are. Are you familiar with that practice, Russ?
Yeah, I actually started out as a part-time officer, but the hours that I worked weren't like anything that part-time ever sees. What it used to be called, it was called being a permanent intermittent employee. So you had a fixed number of hours that you were allowed to work in each year. I can't remember how many it was. I want to say it was like 17 or 1,800 hours or something like that. And so then you would get to the end of your year within a couple of months or something, and then you'd be laid off. And then as soon as the new year picked back up, you'd be back in there and doing it. And there was no difference between myself and any other officer that worked there and stuff, except for the amount of time. Obviously, I had less time at that particular phase of my life, my career. And then as soon as they needed to hire some more permanent positions, then I just got slotted into that instead. Now, other places, if they have some type of part-time feature, I don't know what that would be. I would hope, and I would imagine that they have some type of standard though on the number of hours that you would have to complete in order to possess your certification, or if it's a state that requires you to be a peace officer to be able to keep that status up. Other than that, I don't think I can address that much more than that.
Can I safely assume that the part-time CO is trained as much as the full-time CO in regards to maybe the academy or on-the-job training?
Yeah, well, I can only speak to California. Yeah, we had everything. I only got laid off one time, and it was for 6 weeks until my hours recharged after that. And there was no difference in the training or the paychecks or anything like that. If for some reason it was just some, bean counter kind of thing that they'd worked up that, made it look like they were spending less money than they actually were.
Right. And I like what Cleefit Brian's actually saying, because Brian, we're supposed to have you on maybe the 30th, I think it is. I got to look at the schedule, but he may be on the 30th. We're going to discuss it. But he says, my opinion is no quick fix to staffing issues. I can see more contraband, more dangerous facility, lack of caring, and the list goes on. Quality, not quantity. Mark Ivory said 1,500 hours for part-time COs in California.
Yeah, that's what I would. That was a long time ago.
Right. What was yours?
Yeah, I think it was 1,500 hours. You know, and they do that permanent intermittent employee, and I don't understand why, because California is just as undermanned as every other state. So they roll that out there, and I don't know, they play their bean counter games or whatever it is that they're doing.
Now, this is a good question. I think we can touch on it. Robert, is it Robert Kiergan? All right, and Bri, you may be able to help out on this too. Hey, Bri, if you want to come in, let me know. I'll message you the number. If you want to come in and join on the dialogue, let me know right here, and I'll message you the number. But because Brian actually works in a jail, he holds a union position, so he's able to talk a little bit, I believe. But I don't want him to get in trouble, so. But I see him on the internet all the time, so I'm assuming he's allowed to do it. But Robert says, is a deputy starting in the jails any different than a CO? Assignment description-wise, I hit jail training in 7 weeks as a deputy. Russ, you want to go first, or?
Yeah, you know, I did some time in a detention center myself, and really the big difference is just the influx and the turnover that you get within the population. The population inside a prison is a lot more stable. There's generally a lot more programs for them. In jails, it's more transitory because, you know, you're getting your flux in if you're, you know, your drunk drivers and your burglars and things like that. And there's a certain part of that population that hasn't gone to trial, hasn't been sentenced yet, and then some that are, you know, working it off. A lot of places, most states, in fact, I would say, they usually have a limit of people in there doing 1 year of their time. In California, they changed that law where now these felons can do up to 3 years inside a jail system, and then generally they're discharged. And if you get more than 3 years, then you get scuttled on into the prison system. In jails, you tend to have a lot more chance at seeing or experiencing some sort of in-custody death or in-custody suicides. You know, like I say, prison for as violent as it is, you do tend to have more stability within the population. And those guys, they tend to try and, you know, to a degree, you know, work out their differences or at least have some type of treaty in place. Goes to hell in a handbasket a lot, but it's generally not as uproarious as it were as a jail might be.
Right. I actually do feel the jobs are very similar. Jails have obviously a heavier recidivism rate. You're dealing with inmates right off the street, you know, whether they're going through detox, withdrawal. I believe the number is 11 million inmates that come in and out the doors of jails. The inmates' mindset may be different for the most part. They're, you know, working on their cases. I would like to think for the most part they're on the best behavior, but that's not always the case, guys. Where in the prison, these inmates are kind of settled in. A lot of inmates want to get out of jail and they want to get that sentence. They want to go to a prison because prisons offer more than jails do. Jails, because a lot of the things are very indeterminate of how long the inmate's going to be there. Jails will try to do activities and stuff like that, but it's really the prisons that develop the programs and stuff like that, because when you're in a prison, you kind of have that sentence and you're there for a little bit longer. So I think the jails, I mean, they could, I guess, keep the inmates occupied, but I know in the prisons, you're probably going to see a lot more movement because, again, this is going to be a lifestyle now. They're settling into it. And I really do think you see a lot more of the officers' involvement with that rehabilitation side of things, especially nowadays. But again, I would still like to say the mentality's same. Inmate's inmate, you know, have to be on your toes, have to prepare for the worst. With a jail, you are dealing with, again, inmates right from the street. So you do have that initial danger. I think how the adverse of that would be in the prison, you're dealing with inmates that start to understand the system a lot better. So I think they both have their risk. I mean, you're going to have your risk on one end in the jails where these inmates are just coming in, could be with weapons from the streets, could be on drugs, whatever it is. You got to battle through the detox with them. But in the prison, you get inmates that start to develop a system, really start to understand how the system works, and they know how to circumvent it. So, I mean, again, just you got to have your mindset right for this game. You got to play chess, not checkers. And I would say both jobs kind of got to have that same mentality, because at the end of the day, you're providing safety and security. You know, safety and security is got to be your mindset at all times. Got another question. I actually saw a question from a registered nurse. She just popped on, so I do want to get to her. But I got a few more before we get down to her question. Bear with me, guys, because there's a lot of dialogue coming in and out. So I want to make sure I don't miss any questions. Hold on. Okay, I hope I didn't miss anybody, but this is from Connie Follette. I'm in LeGrand, Oregon. I'm a reserve CO. I work at the jail with the full-time COs that have gone to the academy. I'm hoping to get in full-time work for the 4 12-hour shifts. So when we were talking about part-time, a reserve CO is when needed. Is that what it is? So they don't really have a set schedule? I don't know what a reserve CO.
Maybe that's it's probably the same thing as being like a reserve deputy, where they're really not paid. They work only like 10 hours a month or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I know you got the reserve police. I'm assuming they're filling in a gap. So, like, God forbid you don't have enough people coming in, they can call the reserves. Yeah, that's something we could look into, though. Maybe we could talk about that, then the reserve and the part-time when we have that discussion with Bry. Priscilla Lehman, good evening. Any advice for a new prison registered nurse? So this is great because, hey, by the way, Priscilla, I've done a lot of shows with Connie Eileen. She could be a good source for you if you ever need her. But check out my shows with her. Connie Eileen is CONNIE and then ALLEYNE. And then put Tier Talk, and she's done a lot of shows with me. We actually just released one today for Corrections 1, where we discussed the relationships between medical and custody. We talk about the MAT programs, but also email me and I'll give you a list of her. Actually, you know what, guys? Let me see. I'm going to give you guys a playlist of Connie Eileen's, because I believe Connie actually has a playlist here. Yes, she does. She does have a playlist. She's been in a few of my videos. So let me put this playlist in the because she's actually been in a few. Priscilla, this is for you. This is going to be a playlist here. That playlist is going to have Connie's episodes. I found her to be very informative. So this is her playlist. I just put the link in. Okay, so Russ, you want to go first? Just, she's let's see. Any advice? Where are you, Priscilla? Let me get that question again. Any advice for a new prison registered nurse? So what do we got, Russ?
Yeah, here's what I would tell you is that be very cognizant of what inmates are saying to you and why they're saying it, and understand that there's a whole reason for the things that inmates do, and a lot of it is based on manipulation. They're always trying to get something from you. It might be that they're trying to get attention. It might be that they're trying to get some extra medication. It might be that they're trying to co-opt or corrupt you in a manner where they could bring something in. Think about those things. Anthony has done lots of stuff on manipulation. I've done some with him on it. Over on Keepers of Chaos, if you want to come over there and join us, one of the first articles that I did when I started Keepers of Chaos was about the manipulation of medical staff. Hopefully, at whatever institution that you're at, hopefully there will be some very helpful officers around you that will be able to give you the lowdown on what to expect from these inmates. because they are very, very good at manipulation. Be just really, just be really a stickler for policy, be a stickler for procedure. And when they say something to you, try and in your mind to uncover what their hidden little motivation is for whatever they're telling you, whatever they're saying to you, because there will always be a game within a game within a game. You know, it's a paradox wrapped inside an enigma stuck underneath a riddle. It always is with these guys. They're never gonna talk direct to you about what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I also want to add something up, Priscilla. Remember, you know, as a registered nurse, you could be providing them with medication, or I know our med techs do. So that's something that these inmates want. So you always have to keep yourself mindful that you also want to help in profession. So inmates are going to look to take advantage of you. So you really have to kind of know what your prescribed role is and stay within that prescribed role. Do not let the inmate take you out of what that function is. Do not connect with them on a personal level. You know what your job is. They know what your job is. Sometimes when they ask you a question, they're just testing you. They know what the answer is. So don't be afraid to tell them no right off the bat. You can always change a no to a yes. Also, the relationship with custody. I mean, I don't know. I mean, on my level, I'm on the administration side. So I do work with medical a lot. I mean, I try to facilitate the needs of the house. That's my job. And basically, when you facilitate the needs of the house, it's a matter of trying to get all the departments to work together as one to complete the mission. The key here is that there's got to be a respect between what you got to do and what custody has to do. So when you work in your environment, know what areas that you don't feel are safe areas. Sometimes there's a lot of blind spots in those infirmaries. Maybe, when you're touring a unit, when you do have those blind spots, let people know, because it's not that hard to put a camera there. Really get an understanding of your layout. Try to become security conscious as well. Get yourself in the habit of now of locking your doors every time you leave. Get yourself in the habit of, I know it's going to sound weird, but when you work in a prison setting, a lot of the concerns that civilians in custody have is really custody gets kind of upset sometimes when they feel that the civilians are just not paying attention to safety and security, but sometimes also not realizing that that's not the civilian's job, really. That's why we're there. But we do expect a level of, compliance with the simple things. And we do get very upset when, like a med cart's left unattended and unlocked. That can happen. Or, when an inmate just, like an inmate, put it this way, I'll tell you another thing. An inmate should never be asking for someone directly. So, like, if I have a complaint, I shouldn't be asking for Russ. I should be asking for the department. We don't like the fact when people use specific. So I'll give you an example. A medical, I don't know if it's a little bit different, but if you have this inmate that's constantly trying to come to medical just to see you, and they're specifically asking for you, and you catch that, then you should say, you know what, can this be deferred to another registered nurse? You have to show that this is something that you don't tolerate. A lot of inmates may fancy the nurse and then wind up setting up those bogus appointments just to be with that nurse. And, at one point it's going to be like, listen, you know what? I need you to cover this for me, because no inmate should be asking you to directly when they're going to get medical. It should be, I need to see medical, not I need to see medical because Nurse Priscilla Lehman's working today. Nope, that's definitely not going to happen. Also, you as a registered nurse, you may have access to a lot of the confidential medical boxes. A lot of drop notes come through there. So make sure you take every one of those seriously. Even if someone inmate tries to drop you a love note, because sometimes they may see you pick it up. They know, okay, at this time at 1:00, you go to that med box and you pick up the medical appointment or request for medical. So they may decide, I'm going to put a love note in there for you, because they know that you're the ones that are going to see it. Turn that in immediately, zero tolerance. Let that run its course. We're going through whatever investigative measures that needs to go through. Also, Priya. I mean, hey, it's medical. I'm giving her everything I could. PREA is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Medical plays a big part on that. It means that you're actually going to see the inmates that make the complaints that they were sexually assaulted. You'll also see the inmates that they make the complaints against. If you hear complaints like that, there's zero tolerance for that. You got to kind of run the motions. Even if you may know it's bullshit, you still got to go through the motions because, again, you're going to be held liable. Medical has a lot of liability. Plus, administration really does expect medical to work with them. So another thing we have is sometimes families will call and say that their son is not being treated properly. So administration may call medical, the registered nurse or the nurse manager, and say, hey, listen, go through your, I don't know what your jail will use, but usually it's like an EMR, like an electronic medical record system. And that keeps track of every time you saw the inmate, what the inmate was seen for. Now, administration is allowed to review that, believe it or not. We're allowed to have access to the inmate's medicals if it's requested, because in this case here, you have a family that may be trying to push a lawsuit. So when you take notes, put everything in there. Be as clear as possible. Write those concerns down. If the inmate refuses medical, have them sign that they refused medical, because sometimes the family will say, well, that's just the nurse writing it down because she doesn't want to see him. Bang, here's the signature that says he doesn't want to go. Because sometimes the inmate will tell you one thing and then tell his family something else. Like, I'm not being treated properly here. And then when you go to see him, the inmate's like, well, I don't want to be seen by you. And then he'll call the family, medical doesn't want to see me. So now, unfortunately, there's no record of the inmate being seen. It's like, well, no, what are you talking about? I got a record right now that said the inmate refuses to be seen. So you want to kind of document everything to protect yourself, because a lot of the lawsuits that come through a correctional facility really is, a lot of them are medical. So sometimes you may feel that administration is chasing after you, but that's our job. And technically, we're also trying to protect you. I agree, Priscilla. Documentation is key. Have a partnership with your doctors, because we tend to go to the doctors a lot too when we need concerns. If you feel that something's not right, don't be afraid to report it. There should be some levels of command that you're able to go to. But if you feel something's not right, you got to step up and do something. Even if you feel that, there's concerns with, the inmate's medical or whatever it is, there's got to be a way that you can voice that concern or document that concern. So if anything ever hits the fan, let's say you have a doctor that's just not doing their job, at least you have somewhere that you documented that concern, and that can kind of alleviate you in regards to where your responsibility is. And like Brian says, and Russ touched on, the inmate manipulation aspect, keep yourself professional. I know there's a lot of moves going on, especially in California, to kind of relabel inmates. You don't want to call them inmates because it's dehumanizing. Well, you know what? That title protects us. Well, people don't realize that. So I may want to use the word patient, but then in the back of my mind, I could forget that they're an inmate. The inmate's number one thing to manipulate is that they want to isolate staff, but they also, most importantly, want to make you forget that they're inmates. So what I would like to see from you is that I would like to see you have communication with custody, communication with your staff. Let the inmates see that. Let the inmates see that you're not an isolated individual, that when you have concerns, you go to custody or you go to your bosses. And then at all times, when an inmate, tries to cross that line, you have to make it known it's unacceptable, and you have to make it known that it's you that finds that behavior unacceptable, and report it. And there's a couple of reasons why on this. This is actually my forte here. I teach this all across the country. What happens here is this, is sometimes you have inmates that play their game, and you may catch on to it and you may correct them quickly, but someone else may not. So if you don't document it, that inmate gets a little bit of a freedom to continue the game. But once you start documenting that inmate plays this type of game, it puts him on Front Street. So even if he's good at it, there's a record that says, watch it with him. That's one thing. The other thing is, when an inmate gives you a compliment, you have to address it immediately. You cannot ignore it, because ignoring is passive. You have to literally make sure the inmate knows that that compliment is inappropriate. Now, not that you have to justify it because you don't, but if the inmate asks you why it's inappropriate, the wrong answer would be something like, well, it's against policy and procedure. That's not the right answer, because now that inmate's going to go back and think, well, if it wasn't for policy and procedure, we could be together. No, the right answer is, why can't because I said so. Because I said it's inappropriate. Why? Because that's what I said. That's it. Broken record, but let the inmate know it's coming from you. Hold your ground. Who cares about being socially acceptable? Sometimes the inmates play into that, knowing that we may think, well, maybe this inmate's only asking because, he's concerned or he wants to know. So I feel kind of weird telling him that it's none of his business. Don't feel weird. Put it right out the bat. How many kids you got? None of your business. Are you married? None of your business. Set the standard right at the very beginning. And, a lot of stuff will be technicalities and specifics to what you got to do in the medical, but really get that working relationship with the other partners, the other resources you have, like custody and whatnot. And I like what Brian says, stand your ground and they will remember. And word would spread. And that's the key, right, Russ? The moment let's say an inmate comes up to her and says this, and she stands her ground, she says, no, why not? Because I said no. Now step off. How fast is word spread?
Exactly. Clean, bright lines, no gray areas.
Yeah, and Russ is 100%. That gray area will always get misinterpreted. Trust and believe it, not to your benefit. This is from the few that see. If given the choice, would you say starting out as a new CO, would you go with the jail or a penitentiary? Want me to go first? You want to go again? Russ?
I'll take it. See, I'm gonna say prison because that's the way that I started. That's the way that I'm used to. That's how I built my career. That's how I established who I am today. So what I have to say about it isn't necessarily what's going to be right for everyone. And there's a huge disparity nationwide between what states do and what counties do. There are some states out there where counties, for instance, may make a lot more pay. But then, there's other ones like California where it's the state offices that make so much more pay. Now, pay isn't everything, but it's not nothing either. It's something that you have to take into account. But then you also have to take into account working conditions, how far it is from your house. So, but my recommendation that I'm always going to give is go the prison route, because you're going to be working for a bigger organization, and that organization is going to have more opportunities for you. It's going to have more sideline jobs. It's going to have more chances to advance, for upward more mobility. It's going to have more chances for you to promote. So that would be my answer. But there may be other people out there who have worked in parts of the field that I'm less experienced with, that are going to, blow you away with some great answer and tell you why you shouldn't be working in a prison. You should be working in a jail. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I agree with Russ too. I think that because I've had experiences before, I could have went to a jail that paid a lot more, but I was looking to make this a career. And that career was more about the money. It was about moving up. And I felt that the potential to move up was greater at the state level because there's more facilities, there's more opportunities. And that's kind of my big difference here, where if you go to a jail, it's very limited. A lot of politics in play too, but very limited. Where if you go work at a state, you have multiple facilities and just, a lot more opportunities. But again, that was my reasoning. But if you're looking at it as a learning process, and you're looking at like, well, where should I start first? I really feel both of them kind of serve a different purpose. So I really feel that they're both equal in regards to what you can learn from both. But again, just looking at it from a career perspective, I would choose the prison over the jail. But, that's just a limited choice based on that's what I wanted. It went beyond the money for me. I just wanted to move up. I wanted to secure some rank, and I wanted to kind of get my hands in running a facility. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I think if I was to go with a jail, there'd be a lot less opportunity and a lot more competition. And I could be limited movement. So I would say that the state gave me that a little bit. So, but again, that's just my perspective on that as well. I don't consider one a stepping stone over the other. So I wouldn't say if you start here, you'll be better here and vice versa. I think they have their own little unique things, their own similarities. But again, looking at it from a career perspective, I think the prison could promise more. But, people may look at what's the pay like, what's this, what's that. It's up to you. But if you're looking to move up, I would say the prison. But again, that's, my opinion. Charles Berry asked another question. Why do you think Department of Corrections are or seem to be really slow to adopt or update the way things are done, including technology to help count and do paperwork? Actually, I work with a company now called Guardian. Is that the shirt I'm wearing? And they're actually big with inmate tracking. But Russ, do you want to go first with that, with the technology side?
Yeah, that's boy, I'll tell you what, if you look across the country and you look at where we were in about, 2001, 2002, with regards to things like cell phones, for instance, we've had the technology forever to be able to jam cell phones. And there's no place in the United States right now that I know of that jams cell phones. There's been some technology that's come along that intercepts them and then sends them on if it's a whitelisted number. But we're here. We have this huge security issue. We have the FCC won't do anything, and we plod along, and who knows if it's ever going to be addressed. The same thing in most departments that you see happens with everything else. We just saw, I think it was just last year, the Bureau of Prisons just now adopted OC pepper spray, and that was after they had an officer killed that could have been saved by pepper spray. So, I don't know what the answer is to that. People drag their feet. They always want to say that thing. I've got a video out there somewhere. I'll have to dig it up sometime, where I talk about us saying, well, we've been doing it that way, and we refuse to evolve, and so we end up getting more of our personnel killed. I think that we should, I think that every department should have a technology adoption unit deciding, what we need to go with. California's been slow, but they've been so much faster than everyone else. They're finishing up. They're no longer going to deploy CN gas munitions out on the yards anymore. They're going to strictly CS. So that's a good thing, because CS is a lot more effective. It's cheaper. You get a lot more bang for your buck, so to speak. California, of course, we had, when I started, even way back in '89, we had PR-24 batons, and those were good. But, when the Monadnock expandable came along, then we got those. So it's a matter of, being willing to be flexible and to adapt and to try and look for solutions. And there's just not enough people out there that are good enough critical thinkers to be pushing that along, at least not within corrections, there isn't.
And, if I may add, obviously people look for what's cost effective. When you go to put something in new, you may even get staff that's resistant to it. So sometimes that could cause a hiccup, or the amount of money it's going to cost to train staff, especially when it comes to technology like inmate tracking, or maybe some ITAG system with classification. So at first it may look like, oh, this is a great idea, but it's a process that may have to slowly get implemented because of cost. And sometimes in corrections, a lot of the people feel that, and I think I did a video on this, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that usually comes with a lot of the older individuals who are experienced, who really don't want to change what already exists. So it's a matter of now changing their mindset and reintroducing something. But again, you also have the mindset of the higher ups that will say, you know what, I'm not going to spend money on this if the facility already operates fine. It's funny because a lot of them don't want it to operate like to the best of its ability, as long as it operates fine. So a lot of them may not put the extra effort in, because when they have to spend money, it's like, okay, but if I spend money, they're not looking at it 5 years down the line, because a lot of these people in these higher positions aren't going to be there 5 years from now. They're looking at, how do I save money now? You know, what can I do now that will show up within my course of me being there? So if you had people in those higher positions for longer time, then yes, they would see how cost effective these things would be maybe 10 years down the line. But when you only have 4 or 5 years in those high executive positions, they're not going to see it being cost effective. They're just going to see the amount it costs to install it. Now it's like, well, it may be cost effective, but not under my regime. So therefore, it may not be. Is the prison working fine the way it is now? Yes. Then let's try to do something else, because their objective is to save money. And you know, of course, sometimes to save money, you have to spend money. But then they're gonna be like, well, if I have to spend money, how quick do I save money from that? So, you know, I'm not saying they're behind on the times. Also, there's also another concern too, because privatized facilities usually do this a lot. Privatized facilities, their technology is usually up to par because they don't want the people. You know, they'll replace technology. They'll replace people with technology. So you may go to a privatized facility and they have some top-notch technology going on, but they also have hardly any staff. So sometimes frontline staff could be also very resistant because they may feel that, you know, we get this equipment in, what's this do with our job? When ultimately it's like, it really shouldn't affect you, because I have a camera here doesn't mean I don't need the officer present. You know, the camera should be there to back up the officer, not to replace the officer. Unfortunately, now, sometimes all this new equipment is a way to save money. So the new equipment installed is, okay, well, since we installed this equipment, we no longer need those officers. Well, that shouldn't be the case. The equipment should be a support thing for those officers. So I think there's a lot of things in play. And you also have to have people that are in positions to know that this technology exists. You know, a lot of people are just too concerned about what happens locally that they don't really read out to see what these new things are. And, you know, maybe to push the idea upwards or downwards, whatever way. But for the most part, you know, we are behind on the times. But right now, the biggest concern is getting the people. You know, we are so understaffed nationally that the number one concern right now is to put money towards incentives that are going to invite staff to want to work in this profession, but more importantly, keep those experienced staff in that profession as well, so they can train. So, I mean, would you agree with that, Russ? Or,
well, yeah, you know, the real problem is the lack of big vision thinking. I really think that it comes down to. When California Department of Corrections got OC spray, I mean, the number of broken jaws and trauma to people and hurt staff and everything dropped precipitously. And so when you look at it from that perspective, why weren't they looking at that years ago?
right.
Really, you know, because that's where it's at. They were actually saving money. You know how much a broken jaw costs to fix? And then I look in here at Cleefit talking about, and he's exactly right. You know, cameras are, you know, if you use them as a deterrent, it's fine. If you use them to place staff, it's not. You know, we need, like he said, boots on the ground. That's where it's at. But then also adopting, you know, new technology and outfitting your people with, you know, good equipment. You know, I was lucky in California Department of Corrections. You know, I had my vest, I had my utility belt, I had my Monadnock expandable baton, I had my MK9, I had a couple of chemical grenades, I had my handcuffs. So, you know, it was great. But I feel sorry for these facilities out there that are getting the shaft because people are so short-sighted as to think that it's going to cost them money. Good equipment is going to save you money in the long run every single time it's tried. And good training will save you even more.
Well, I thought we can get to one more question. And by the way, guys, if you haven't, don't forget we're on Facebook, Tier Talks on Facebook, Keepers of Chaos, which is a group that Russ runs, very informative group. A lot of correctional professionals. We answer questions. We really get involved. Eventually, we're looking to see what we could do with the group outside of the Facebook page. Check us out, though. If you have any questions you want to send my way, gangianthony@yahoo.com. That's GANGI Anthony@yahoo.com. Russ, what's your email if they want to email you?
You know what? I'm going to have to set aside an email address because what I do on my personal email right now, I have some business things on it, stuff like that.
You don't have the Keepers of Chaos. You don't have like the Keepers of Chaos in there yet?
No, I don't have that. I don't have that one anymore. So I'm gonna have to set something up for the viewers, because I would definitely like more interaction, because there's some great chats happening right here that I would really love to examine further.
Well, if you guys are on, you guys can always email me if you want Russ's attention. I can always forward him out the email. But again, we're looking to grow. There's a couple of things I got going on. I may go out to Nebraska. I got it. I was invited to speak by a sheriff out there. Supposed to go speak at an event in Boston. I'm going to try to do that as well. That's October or November. Just got a couple of things going on. And then I work for this company, Guardian. They're one of my sponsors. I do a lot of videos for them, but I also do professional shoots. I got to do a lot of traveling with them, and I have to go out to Rhode Island and North Carolina to film a documentary for them. This will be one of many, because there's going to be a lot coming, guys, for us, but it's a professional film crew. It's got a lot of stuff going on, but we're going to try to produce the regular content here. So every Monday, there'll be that live Q&A, 8 to 10 around Eastern Standard Time. That's going to be every Monday. We'll bring guests on. If not, it'll be me and Russ. This week, this Monday, we're going to be discussing tribal facilities. So basically prisons ran by the Native American councils like the Navajo. The following week after that, we're going to have Dan Wise on. He has a channel called RDAP Dan, RDAP, and we're going to discuss the residential drug addiction program. I think that's what it is. At the federal prison. So we'll talk about the drug programs they got there. And the 30th, by the way, guys, even though that's the topic, we can still kind of venture off a little bit. We always do. And then on the 30th, most likely we'll have a lot of random topics, but we're going to invite Brian Patrick Clack on. Of course, hopefully he gets it approved. He works at a county jail, and we'll discuss the part-time, full-time, but maybe we'll discuss a lot of questions about the differences between jails and prison staff, because we got a lot of those questions today. So I'll bring Brian on, and we could pretty much maybe get some discussions from those different perspectives. I think that will actually be a pretty good dialogue. And let's see. Okay, and Priscilla Lehman just said she's going to send a request to Keepers of Chaos, Russ. So Russ will get to that press. Russ, you'll get to it after this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If that request is up there, I'll be taking care of it right before I go to bed.
Yeah, I think if you send it out now, we'll see it, and then Russ will put it through. This way, get you into the group now, and then you also have the Tier Talk page as well. There's a Tier Talk Facebook page. I think we're over. It's like 28,000 followers, so that's pretty good. And then we'll start talking one day about bringing these groups outside, because that's what we're actually trying to facilitate, guys. We have a lot of events coming up, like I mentioned. Also, a few events in New Jersey. If you're in the New Jersey area, let me know. We have a meet and greet in December, because I'm on the executive board of the ACA. Oh, that's awesome. Priscilla saved the playlist. So we have, I believe we're focusing this year a little on reentry, but again, guys, we all play a part in that. So don't think that we don't. We do. So the last question I want to get to, which I thought was a good question, I believe comes from Mark Ivory. Yeah, Mark Ivory. Would it help to improve state corrections if the standards, training, and salaries for COs would be on par with state police?
That's part of one little talking point that I often get to, where I talk about what I consider to be important in corrections, which I call STEP, S-T-E-P, status. Status is peace officers, T is for training, E is for equipment, and then P is for pay. If you want to retain talented people, and you don't want to be, building your training budgets where you just have a bunch of people churning through, pay is really important. Fortunately, in California, we were on par with and above even many police departments. That's not always the case across the nation. I've seen, many times where, they're not doing much better than minimum wage. So yeah, that's one facet that we have to do. And that's why I always talk about that anacron step: status, training, equipment, pay.
Hey, Priscilla, if you're on Facebook, you can also request us as a friend, by the way. Oh yeah, CKS believe this is one of the most important questions of the night. I think actually after I say something, I think Russ may want to couple what I have to say, because there's something I want to say here. Obviously right now you got to have that pay, that incentive, the benefits, all that stuff, because you got to have twofold. First off, we want to have qualified people coming into this profession. So you got to have pay that invites that. And if there's an intense job market out there, you have to be able to compete with that job market. And I would like to say to work in corrections, you should have that same level of profession that you would find as a police officer, as a state police officer. So the correctional profession should be on the lookout to see what do state police make in that area, what do police officers make in that area, just so we're getting kind of from that same pool of individuals, because I know if the incentive's good, there's a good chance that I'm getting good people working next to me as the frontline professional. But if the pay's not good and the incentive's shit, I'm going to start questioning who you're putting next to me, because why would they take this job? And that kind of messes with the employee morale of the whole facility. Also, when it comes to training, I'm a big fan of training. I love training. I think it's needed. Does training cost money? Yes, it costs money. But here's the funny thing, guys. We again, even my background's in correctional officers, but sometimes I also mean correctional staff. So forgive me. All because I say officer doesn't mean it's just my background. But sometimes I also mean correctional staff. I believe there should be a lot of training for all correctional staff. But specifically with the correctional officers on this one, though, if I may, we are officers. In Jersey, they're police officers. That's their title. California, they're peace officers. It's a fight that's really a national fight, which we should have won a long time ago. I don't understand. I was hoping when Trump comes into office, there could be some stuff that he could work on. But I know it's federal, but, you never know. Sometimes the feds have a big influence on on what trends, what moves forward. With that said, if you have academies that are 2 or 3 weeks long, those people that work in corrections is going to be very hard for them to be seen as officers. But once you get those academies that are intense, those states that really push those officers to the limit, I'm telling you something, like Jersey, Cali, when people see this type of academy that these correctional officers are going through, there's no question in my mind that they're seeing that these individuals are of that caliber to be an officer. So I think the training is very important because it sets that level for us to be seen at that higher level. If the training is weak, that officer, I don't think it gives us the respect that we need. So I think eventually what I'm going to do one day is with a professional film crew, and I'm working on it now, is I'm actually going to go to states where their academy's intense. Trust me, guys, it's coming up, guys. I'm working on it now. So I may go to like a state, let's say like California, where their officers go through an intense academy, got great de-escalation tools, everything. And I'm going to have an interview, see how they practice, see all this stuff. And then I'm going to sit down, I'm going to ask the people in California, why do you think your officers need this? And they're going to explain exactly why. Then you're going to go to a state that only has, like, let's say a 3-week academy where the officers hardly have any tools. And then you're going to kind of say, well, if California says that their officers need this, and in Georgia, they're kind of doing the same type of job, how could you say they don't need it? How could you say that it's not needed? But it's about time we start comparing and contrasting what's happening in those different states. Hey, you have time for one more question, Russ?
Absolutely.
Because Don John just asked a question. What's your take of candidates in their late 30s trying to become a correctional officer?
I think that's an absolutely great idea. And the reason I say that is because, as you start to age and you get a little bit more mature, there is a lot less, emotional immaturity for an individual like that. They have a proven track record of what they've done in their past and what they have to bring to the table. I've known lots and lots of officers that have started, 30s or later. And, I tell you what, I love training those guys because they always approach me. It seems like the older ones are the ones that approach me and say, hey, Russ, how do you do what you do? How do you find cell phones like you do? How do you find the weapons? And they're sincere about it. Whereas the younger generation, they may not be as key as to trying to be an impact player as some of the older guys are. At least that's what I've seen. That's what my experience has been. So I love training a new guy that's, 30, 35, 40, whatever.
Jessica asked a good question. Whatever happened to that show you were working on with the guy from the New Mexico prison? She's talking about Aaron Bell. I was looking forward to that on Vimeo. Yeah, so were we. So were we. So I've tried calling Aaron. We'll touch base again. I got to touch base with him, but this was a promo that he had did to sell the idea. And at that time, he had the connections and looked like they were getting moved forward. But I think the way the agenda is with the television, it may have been seen as too aggressive. I had another route I wanted to take with it, to be honest with you, a route that's kind of beneficial to both sides, just so we can get it out there. But I'll call him again, but I don't think it's sold. I think that it got to the point where it may have been seen as aggressive. I don't know. I have to ask him. But sometimes these things take time. You think it's not going anywhere. All of a sudden they call you a year later. But if you notice, the trailer that was used was actually excerpts from the show he did at the New Mexico prison, rookie year. So now that I actually have this camera crew and I have the company Guardian, there could be a good chance that we could work, because we're actually doing some professional filming now. We have our first shoot October, the weekend of the first week of October. I'll be in Rhode Island filming part of this documentary. And then we finish it up in North Carolina. That will be the first one. Now, guys, this is all professional content. I have the first few episodes lined up of what we're looking to do. A lot of the stuff is literally going to be very beneficial to our needs, but I'm also going to tell the stories of some of our fallen heroes. I think it's about time their story gets told, and that's what the first episode is going to be about. Now, mind you, it's not going to be listed on this channel. It is going to be on the other channel, the Guardian channel. Jessica is applying to Rhode Island DOC. I'm going to be in Rhode Island October 4th, 5th, and 6th. I'm going to be doing the documentary there. I don't know if you're in the region, you want to see what it is. We're going to be meeting with the mother of a fallen hero. And we're going to tell this fallen hero story. And then we're going to finish it up in North Carolina, because unfortunately that's where her life ended. But she was raised in Rhode Island. So I'm going to be there again towards the beginning of October 4th, 5th, and 6th. So it's going to be interesting. I'm very curious to see how this final project's going to look. But again, it gives me a film crew now. So, and money to fly wherever I got to go. So if I want to shoot something in California, they'll pay for me to go to California and shoot. They kind of give me a lot of freedom of what I want to create. They would have actually given me more videos to do, but I can't because I still have a full-time job. But when I retire, I could be doing 4. Right now, I can only commit to pretty much 1 a month. And it's great because I just kind of get to sit back. They film what they film, and they do all the editing. So I just kind of get to be a little bit more relaxed in the process. But wait till you see some of the stuff that we have coming up, because this agency that I'm working with, or this company, has a lot of access to a lot of prisons, or jails. So we're able to do a lot of stuff on site. Like I may want to do an episode on officers and PTSD, or maybe I want to do an episode of a successful program that's happening at one of the state facilities. Whatever it is, we're going to try to really start covering a good roundabout discussion on the correctional system. And then hopefully these discussions get taken seriously enough when people go to challenge the system. Now we have professional content that proves them wrong. So what I'm hoping to do is when people go to bastardize the system, I get at that film crew and I kind of challenge it. So when people want to bastardize, you got to get rid of, let's say, solitary confinement. Well, we all know it's not solitary. We know that's just a primitive term that they're using to justify their agenda. So then maybe we go to a facility where they allow us in and they let us see the practice of what really restrictive housing is and watch how much people actually change their mind. Yeah, I think this is going to be very fun. Again, I got the first one coming up at the end of October, so I will be in Rhode Island. And we'll be shooting. And also, I'm almost at 10,000. I think I'm at 9,422. So me and Russ were talking that around 10,000. YouTube really doesn't float my material around a lot because I don't monetize the channel. So, but me and Russ were thinking around when I get around 10,000, we're going to try to start really securing those higher level interviews. Something about that number 10,000 works. So again, we came up with that schedule of every Monday live Q&A. Then I'm going to do an upload on Wednesdays. Russ will do an upload on Friday. So we get like at least 3 materials out a week, which is what? 3 times 4 is 12, about 144 videos a year. Live Q&A, which is going to be great. And we'll know the topic ahead of time. If you go to my community board on YouTube, you'll see what the topic is probably by that Friday. So we posted the tribal one that we're going to have. We're going to have an admin from one of the Native American facilities. But me and Russ are even going to try to maybe shoot on location. When Russ goes back to California, he's got some ideas. And it's great because when people ask you, oh, I got this YouTube channel, Tier Talk, the first question they may ask is, well, how many subscribers? 10,000. That's 10,000 in a secured niche. Never going to have 1 million, but 10,000 correctional professionals or 10,000 people that are interested in this channel. So I think that's great because I'd rather have that 10,000 people that are interested as opposed to 1 million people on the news that you really don't know what the hell they're interested in. Hey, Russ, you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I am stoked and excited and looking forward to doing everything from the new high-end, camera guys that you're going to have following you around to just sitting here and doing what we're doing tonight. I really think that we're going to be successful in having a good impact on corrections, doing our little part to try and, steer some things our ways that, after all the time that, corrections has been in the shadows. So I'm really happy about it. And I'm really glad to, be able to sit here and, just chew the fat with you guys and, be able to maybe give you some direction or you guys teach me something because, I'm not done yet.
So yeah, I agree. Now, guys, again, there's going to be partnerships here. Like right now, through my Facebook and through my social media accounts, I pretty much have access to almost any facility in regards to if something happens, I'm going to get a message on it. That's great. I would like to see that type of traction on YouTube because YouTube is technically taken more seriously than Facebook. But our agenda is a little bit different. So we really can't rely on YouTube to promote what we do. I rely on you guys. So like right now we're watching the video. Have you all liked the video? Have you done stuff like that? The reason why I asked for that, the likes and the comments, it moves the video up on the algorithm. Let me tell you guys something, guys, because I've been thinking about this. We're severely outnumbered when it comes to this profession, but yet we're the ones that are literally giving out the balanced advice. I don't preach to hate inmates. And believe it or not, a lot of the officers that join my channel, they don't hate inmates. They spend a lot of their time being professional with these inmates and looking to help the inmate grow. But unfortunately, the other side will make it look different. And they rather just bastardize the profession and the people that work in it. Now you see these channels, these prison channels that they just bastardize us. They bastardize what we do, but their channels grow. To see one channel at 2,000 and then you wake up, one morning and they're at 56,000 because the Daily Mail decided to pick up one of their videos because they decided to talk about, let's say, giving birth in prison. They get this open venue now and it's just a venue with a lot of people that are listening at the system being bastardized, and a lot of it's lies. We're not perfect. We have flaws, but it's that constant generalizing it, that, all officers are shit, and whatever it is. And then, it's like, well, all inmates are shit. No, guys, that doesn't solve nothing. You had a problem with one officer, had a problem with one inmate. Does that mean all inmates are shit? No. Does that mean all officers are shit? No. And that stereotype really does kill, it really does kill the profession. And then to see that, these channels grow so fast that we're constantly behind the scene, or behind the 8 ball. So we're constantly always having to catch up and just kind of defend instead of getting ahead. And I agree, Cleveland media preys on that. And so we constantly have to always find a way to get ahead. So guys, there are going to be times, guys, where I'm going to have to balance the channel out to get the people to see our perspective, which means that you're going to see some people that enter this channel. We had it last week where we had a wife whose husband was in solitary. And she came to us for advice because I think she's starting to realize that these other channels are just not beneficial. They're entertainment channels. Our channels are informative. So I talked to RDAP Dan today, and he's, again, a former inmate, runs a drug treatment program or helps people go through prison, but was part of a drug treatment program. He didn't run it. Sorry about that. But he was part of it. And he talked about like these prison channels and how they're not really that beneficial. But again, our channels are low compared to theirs. These guys are in 300,000 subscribers, and me and RDAP, what's RDAP at 6,000? I'm at 9,000. But the key here is this, and it's something that we preached about all day. I think Bonnie had set it up there. Same thing as we're going through the correctional facilities. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. Because I'll guarantee you that our audience will outshine our small 10,000, we're going to be 10,000, will outshine any audience because we're professional. We know the system, and we can educate people like nobody else can. So once people start realizing that, this is the channel to go to for that resource, they'll come. And once they come, when they see this community and when they see how we're open and we keep this dialogue going, they'll stay. It's not about having them just visit. It's about having them stay. That's why I really do depend on you guys, where if we start getting that perspective from the other side, if they're respectful, we welcome them. We welcome them because you know what? It's not always the families. Sometimes, kids make bad choices or people make bad choices and the family just looks for answers. They may have never done anything wrong. So I want to show them that we're a group of professionals that if you have advice, we can help you. What's your concern? What's going on? Because at the end of the day, we have to flip our perspective on what people see of us. And it really does start with that side first. Because I'll tell you something, if you can interview the inmates I interacted with, they all have respect for me. Why? Because I gave them respect. They may not have always got what they wanted, but they still have respect for me and what I do. So, again, guys, we're going to start stretching out. We're going to start doing material that is beneficial for the system as a whole. And we're going to start bringing people into this channel that you wouldn't expect. But don't get me wrong. The moment they're disrespectful, they're gone. I don't tolerate that shit. But if they give us respect, then let's welcome them. Let's be professional with them. And let's show them that we're a family. And at the end of the day, I'll tell you something. I don't care if it's 1 or 1 million. I just love it when you get someone from their channel that comes over here and says, man, I don't even know why I even subscribe to that channel. So I it only has to be one, but that just kind of validates the value of my channel and the community, the people we have on. So as always, guys, love you guys. Don't forget, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And if you're on Facebook, hit up. Let's see you in Keepers of Chaos. Right, Russ? Good night, Russ.
Absolutely.
I know. You got
to say, and one more thing is later tonight I'll be messaging you. I finally got that video fixed, and so hopefully maybe tomorrow you can put it up.
Yeah, I'll upload a video from Russ tomorrow. He owes me a video. Should have been done today, Russ, but I'll let it slide. Okay, so all right, guys. I'll see you later. Love you guys. Stay safe.